we as a community need to answer at least 2 questions. I'm just going to boil it down to 2 questions. The first one is, do we want to buff every single jobs to Pictomancer's DPS level? Or the second one is, hey, why aren't we nerfing Pictomancer? After all, isn't an ultimate meant to have a DPS check, and that any outlier job that trivializes that, is that not a bad thing? Now, wherever you answer that last question, this one's a pretty universally brought up thing as game criticism against Final Fantasy XIV, is that job homogenization has gone a little out of control. And as someone who went to the media tour, 7.0 was listed as the rewards revamp for Final Fantasy XIV, although I feel like we're going to see the full swing of that in patch 7.2 and beyond. Especially, actually, considering that we're getting that Chaotic Alliance raid system that's going to add a new gearing path. But 8.0 was really about fleshing out job identity and really diversifying the jobs. And that leads us kind of to this interesting point where we need to also decide which problem is worse. Having a job that has unique traits to it that some of the other jobs don't have. Looking at you, Black Mage. Pictomancer's damage is very spiky. Pictomancer can paint during downtime, and that makes Pictomancer in Futures Rewritten Ultimate with lots of downtime very effective. Whereas Black Mage only has 1 clear, and if I look at C DPS, we're not looking at R DPS, we're looking currently at C DPS, Black Mage is second lowest, right beside Machinist, which is absolutely in the shitter. Like, we're talking like a Walmart shitter. Machinist is gonna get a talking video about it, because what the fuck. But Black Mage has very flat damage relatively. Obviously it goes through ice and fire phases, fully aware, but Black Mage's damage relative to Pictomancer's is very flat, and we can really see that the difference between those jobs, that they're not homogenized. That Pictomancer has a very different approach to its damage patterns than Black Mage, and we are now seeing the effect of that, aren't we? Well, obviously we fucking are. And Pictomancer is a bajillion miles ahead. In fact, and someone may need to correct me in the comments, but I believe that every single group that has cleared has had Pictomancer in some form or another. And I know I mentioned it in passing, but let me more directly say it. Pictomancer is so far ahead because during downtime, Pictomancer has a unique canvas system where the Pictomancer can, during this downtime, paint, and that is going to unlock some of their burst abilities, and this is incredibly powerful. As, well, the numbers show, it's incredibly powerful. And unfortunately, another thing that the Pictomancer has over Black Mage is that the Pictomancer, yes, it is a small shield, but the Pictomancer does bring a 2-minute AoE mitigation tool. And when we're talking about Ultimate, especially on Content Ultimate, where we are basically at the weakest point we will be, we're going to get dungeons, we're going to get relics that are going to boost some secondary substats, but that kind of mitigation does help. And so I'm going to say this very tongue-in-cheek as someone who plays healers and is kind of fucking sick of the healer homogenization, and I do have a little bit of a bone to pick with homogenization myself. I'm sick of every healer basically spamming 1 and then having a single damage over time effect that they refresh on a 30-second timer. I'm really fucking sick of it. But let's quote-unquote fix Pictomancer. Well, the first thing is that we are going to nerf the shit out of all of their canvas abilities. You know those big painting things that are currently the big burst? Well, we're gonna just nerf the shit out of those. The big hallmark of the Pictomancer's kit. Nah, we're gonna nerf them, and we're gonna shuffle all of that damage into Holy in White. Yes, we're gonna shuffle all of that damage into there. And so that has a few good things to it and a few bad things. But that's not a Pictomancer video. We're doing this kind of for the sake of homogenization. And then, because Pictomancer has a 10% AoE barrier, we're also going to give Black Mage a 10% AoE barrier for the party. Also, Pictomancer has more mobility than Black Mage, and so we are also going to up the cooldown of Smudge, double it to 40 seconds, which is still very quick if we're honest about a cooldown ability. And then we are also going to give Black Mage a equivalent mobility ability, which is just going to be a I know that they have the ethereal manipulation. You get the point. Now, I want you to answer, is that really the path that we want to go especially given how we have talked about this 2-minute meta and how all the raid buffs align up and how that's something that a lot of people have really cried out against. And I'd like to remind everyone, we asked for that. We were like, hey, well, some of these jobs have different raid buffs that don't align with mine, and that feels bad. I don't like mine on a 90-second cooldown. I just want everything to be on the 2-minute window. Like, we basically asked for that. And in that, everything's been homogenized to shit. Like, I can't even call the 60-second 1-minute burst window trick attack window anymore, because people are like, what the fuck is a trick attack? Y'all making me feel like a senior already. I hate you. I'm not that old. I swear. But now I'm going to shift gears completely and say some of the good things about Pictomancer in its current state. Pictomancer is actually really interesting because Pictomancer can combine with Red Mage, and the Red Mage can take even a melee slot or whatever you want. And this is actually a really good combination. I've actually progged in some of my best prog in Party Finder, where I'm basically getting fisted the entire time. The prog is really great between Pictomancer and Red Mage, because the Red Mage's utility and their ability to pick up people does not impact like the total DPS checks, because Pictomancer is so above and beyond. And then some people can be like, why don't we replace the physical range DPS with this? And so the first thing is, you really need to be honest. Is that 1% party-wide buff for bringing a physical range DPS role going to make or break the prog? You do need to ask that question. If your Pictomancer and Red Mage combination can outdo that damage difference, and looking at the C DPS right now and looking at the R DPS right now, I really think that it's possible. Basically, yeah, we're at the point where we're starting to question, hey, is Fizz ranged even needed? Because keep in mind that both of them bring Addle, so they have the roll utility, which is basically an AoE 10% mitigation. That's what every Fizz ranged brings. And then Machinist brings Dismantle, which Machinist DPS is horrible, and I still don't think that that makes Machinist okay right now. But relative to Bard's Nature's Menae, and I'm a Scholar, so I do take advantage of that for sure. I mean, Sage can now too, because it's AoE. But I think that if we're starting to compare Pictomancer's AoE mitigation, and then Red Mage brings AoE mitigation, at this point, I think that it's starting to become clear that we're starting to grasp at straws. So what does Fizz ranged bring that a Red Mage replacing them in the party that we would actually be missing? And it's really that 1% buff to all stats, like to your HP, to your damage, and that. And if that can be made up for, well, there are some phases, and I think that people are a little embellishing on it, but there are some phases where Revive can definitely save a pull or allow you to get more prog in. And so I'm kind of the mind thinking, why are we not just booting out Fizz ranged for Red Mage? And I'm saying this a little early before people fucking have us like spaz. Like, can we please not spaz out about me saying that? But I'm saying that right now I'm already feeling like this is like a Fizz ranged that also brings a res. I like this. I'm very basic. I like this. And as a barrier healer, so hey, I'm the one getting the ass kicking. I'm the one needing to pick up the slack. I honestly found it easier to heal. Like, I didn't notice an issue with mid. Now, obviously, I'll need to get to phase 5, and God, with how inconsistent PF is, who fucking knows? Bro, I was on mirror. Like, I'm actually doing my exact prog points. I will not say that I'm on a prog point until I get there. Oh my God, PF fucked up DD for 2 days straight. Saturday and Sunday. I was in the fucking fight all day, and oh my God, people couldn't do DD, and I was like, I'm gonna fucking go. Like, at this point, I could do DD Diamond Dust Phase 2 in my sleep. So, take all that with a grain of salt, but we're at the very interesting point where Pictomancer does so much damage that Red Mage's lack of damage really is kind of made up for, and I think that that might become... Is that going to be a meta comp? Obviously not, because everyone's going to stick to the, oh, I need one of every role thing, but like, I like the res a lot more than whatever the fuck ranged Fizz is bringing. Like, I'll be the bitch. Sure, I'll be the asshole that says it. Like, Bard, Dancer, Machinist, sorry, all three of you don't bring Revive. And this fight, I've already seen points where Revive can allow you to prog more, and so it's just like Bard, Dancer, and Machinist. Like, if I had a choice, I'd pick a red mage over them, because I've also not had an issue with any of the damage checks. Like, we were very clearly on the way to meet even the phase 2 20% Shiva damage check. Like, I wasn't feeling pressed whatsoever in these PF groups, which for PF is crazy. But let's get on to a different topic of, if I don't have a Pictomancer in the group, and keep in mind, again, I said it very vocally and I can't emphasize enough, this isn't PF, and if you're comparing PF to a preformed group, you're fucking stupid. Because PF is PF, it's nothing like that. But in PF, when our group didn't have a Pictomancer, I was noticing even the phase 1 was having a lot. Like, we'd need to pop DPS LB a lot of the time, melee DPS LB, just to meet the phase 1 DPS check. It was kind of crazy, if I'm honest. So when people say, oh, these DPS checks are so crazy low, I'm just like, is that in the world where Pictomancer's warping the numbers? And again, and I think I may have said it earlier in the video, but let me reiterate, I also don't think that we should aspire to have every single content be as hard as the Omega Protocol, because I mean, I cite Xenosys Vex again, that he called it a vomited on diaper and said that it was miserable to prog. I mean, even like Zephla like it was not a healthy fight for the game, in my opinion, in my honest opinion. I'm glad it exists for those that actually want to penalize themselves, but I honestly don't think that it's healthy for the game for every single piece of content to be that brutal. But I can say the phase 1 DPS check, I've been in so many groups that literally could not pass it. And I mean, I know people will be like, oh, well, I'm going to look up your tombstone.gg. Like, go ahead. Like, I literally am not lying. There are so many groups that could not pass that. It was insane. I'm going to end this video on this point, though. Is Pictomancer has clearly introduced some unique aspects that we've gone into. Like, it is not such a flat damage. Like, it's very spiky in its damage profile, very bursty, and that it can take advantage of downtime. That's super unique. I, again, cannot emphasize that I don't really want to see that go away so that we can just homogenize another job into the ground for the sake of balance. Like, but at the same point in time, there is no denying that Pictomancer is warping the game right now. And so I'm caught in between two worlds. And if you asked me, oh, you're fence sitting, I actually am not fence sitting. I don't know what to tell you. I fucking hate job homogenization. I am so fucking sick that Scholar has lost all of its damage over time effects just so that it could spam broil. Like, I personally do have a little bit of a vendetta against homogenization, so maybe that's why I have such an issue, because clearly Pictomancer's broken. Like, clearly this is an issue. Clearly this is going to be the default go-to job. In fact, I'm going to make a damn timestamp about it. Pictomancer will be what the caster slot in PF is going to be locked to. I already can feel it in Party Finder. I've already seen it a bunch of times, but Pictomancer is so game warping right now that right now I can genuinely tell you I would be shocked if Party Finder does not start locking the caster slot to Pictomancer. Oh, Cole's an asshole, Doomcaller, blah blah blah. I've seen it in game, guys. And then you look at the numbers here of the people that have cleared, and Pictomancer is dominant not just in phase 1, not just in phase 2, but is going berserk in 4, 2, and 5, and even 3. Like, there's never really a time when Pictomancer isn't like this overarching thing. And so even I, who has a vendetta against homogenization, because I literally, bro, like, I'm so sick of hitting the fucking 1 key. I have a vendetta against it. Even I'm just like, do we want to purge this unique mechanic, this unique outlier in the name of balance? And I think that we might have to. Now I'm going to really piss off people. I left this to the end of the video. Is nerfing Pictomancer at this point, when we've already had world first groups do it, when we've had a whole bunch of different raid groups clear with Pictomancer in its current power level, which does trivialize the DPS checks, I'm just going to say it, Pictomancer clearly warps the game. This is clearly above the pack. And then Machinist, fuck, Machinist is well below the pack. Fuck. But is it fair to everyone else who's progging Futures Rewritten Ultimate if we nerf Pictomancer? I don't think so. And that's the issue. Is right now, Pictomancer has had a bunch of clears. Groups have cleared this fight. There are groups that probably would not have cleared if it wasn't for Pictomancer raising the DPS checks. And again, I'm not saying that any player is bad, but I'm saying when you have this much of a damage discrepancy, which is just bizarre, like the lowest quartile on Pictomancer, that's what this box is. This lowest quartile is above the highest quartile on the second highest, which if I'm looking at C DPS right now is Dragoon. It is that broken for Pictomancer. So is it fair now if we nerf Pictomancer for every single other group that hasn't cleared Futures Rewritten Ultimate? Like, and I know that some people will be like, well, of course, we need to stop the flow. Okay, well, you have all these other groups that have cleared, people who probably would have or may still be progging it if it wasn't for this. And so I don't think it's fair at this point. And we really do hit that bit of a moral issue about nerfing Picto. And that's the problem, is if we go into patch 7.2 and Pictomancer is nerfed, that will mean that every single group that was progging that didn't manage to clear is going to have a harder time clearing Futures Rewritten Ultimate, the exact same fight, simply on the merit that their DPS checks are going to be tighter simply because Pictomancer's nerfed. I think that we're in a really ethical gray zone here, where Pictomancer's clearly ahead, and if you ask me, I think Pictomancer needs to be nerfed. But I also think nerfing it is gonna fuck a lot of people over at this point with getting their own clears, and I don't think that that's fair. I don't think it's fair that people are just like, oh yeah, well I got my clear, I can join like duty complete groups. Well, fuck you, and fuck anyone behind me. So it's literally would be like closing the door behind you, and I think that that's a big issue. And I think that less of an ethical concern and more of a concern about the fact that Pictomancer is basically mandatory. Respectfully, I think that it's going to happen. Pictomancer is going to be widely considered mandatory. Widely. Not everyone's going to fucking agree with that, obviously, but look at the numbers. Like, come on. We're going to be in the position where Machinist needs to be buffed. Dancer, Bard, I think that they are all so far behind the pack, especially Machinist, that it is pretty hard to dispute it needs to be raised. As well as the caster slot, because Pictomancer is necessary. Well, Black Mage is in an unacceptable position, Red Mage is in an unacceptable position, and frankly, like, like, what the fuck is Summoner even doing at this point? Like, I'm gonna be the asshole that says it. Like, as someone who used to love Summoner, like, Summoner was the first video, one of the first videos I did on this channel. It's the video that actually pushed me over, like, 200 subs. Like, it was crazy. I loved that job so much, and to see it reworked into something that frankly I don't enjoy, like, where's my donk gameplay, where's any of the management of pets of it? Like, I digress, but my point is you changed it into this, and Summoner and Black Mage are so far behind the pack, so far behind Pictomancer, that they may as well not even be in the same category, because there isn't a single person that would take a Pictomancer with these numbers over a Summoner or a Black Mage unless they were doing a challenge run. Or if they really liked their friend, but in the back of their head, they were if we remove all emotion, all friendship, all bullshit, that motherfucker on Summoner would probably be replaced with a Pictomancer. Let's be real. Let's be real. That's exactly what you would do, because that is what the numbers say to do. And so all of these jobs need to be buffed. And that is really the dilemma that we're in, is if we're nerfing Pictomancer, well, that's not fair to anyone in the future trying to do Futures Rewritten Ultimate, because now you're closing the door behind you. Fuck you, I got my clear. Fuck every single bitch behind me. That's not fair. And now if we buff up every other job, well, the DPS check is... well, now we're really fucked, because if we have every single caster doing Pictomancer damage, well, you're just going to stack 2 casters, obviously. But then if you buff ranged physical DPS to that level, well, the DPS check's going to be fucked too. So do you kind of get the issue? Like, we're in this very weird, contentious point where do we buff, do we nerf? Do we homogenize? Do we not homogenize? The community hates homogenization. What is ethical? What is fair? And that is why I think that this issue is actually interesting. And again, this literally isn't me fence sitting, because I truly have a vendetta against homogenization. I think that it would be very hard for me, privately or publicly, to ever get me to agree to nerf Pictomancer in the way where you change how its gameplay functions. Because again, I don't want to homogenize a Pictomancer into having the same damage pattern as a fucking black mage. No. As someone who's about to press the one key about 100,000 more times over the next few days, spamming fucking broil, I'm sorry, I'm resistant to say, homogenize Pictomancer, fuck it. I just can't bring myself to say that. I think it's cool to have some jobs that benefit during the downtime, because it's just like, why does everything need to play the damn same? Like, you can't get me to agree with that. Now, I think that all the other jobs need to be buffed. You know, if you really want me to not fence it, and I've kind of processed it even through talking through this, I think that Futures Rewritten Ultimate, we've had the world first race go through. Got it. We're gonna be getting more dungeon gear and relics later, and that's gonna make the fight easier. Even if you look at the DPS checks of DSR on content versus later, even currently rather, there's a significant difference in how the DPS check was. I think that the lesser, not perfect, but the lesser evil here is to quite simply just bring up the power level of the other jobs. Because if you close the door behind you, I can tell you, as someone who is currently beating the ground in PF, I'd be a little disappointed. I'd be like, well, fuck. I mean, all these other people got it, and now I need to do it on a harder mode? Come on, bro. That's not fair. But, I mean, I'm on Scholar either way, so, I mean, don't think it's me trying to save my own ass. I'm just on barrier healer being a dumbass. With that, I'm going to close off this video. 20 minutes of talking about this, but I honestly could probably go longer, because I think it's an interesting ethical dilemma. Because it's like, okay, well, do you want to fuck everyone else out of future clears out of this? Personally, to me, this ultimate has already been world prog. It already has a bunch of clears in it. We already have people, a lot of people who haven't even cleared yet, that are on late phase 4 to late phase 5, or in phase 5. And I think that this is, I don't want to say it's set in stone and dead and done content, because it's obviously fucking not. But I think the lesser of the two evils is, hey, if you're gonna make, I think that it would be buffing everything else. I think making those DPS checks a little more lenient, you're gonna fucking do it anyhow. So if you're gonna do a balance pass, I think the lesser of the evils would not be nerfing Pictomancer. I think it'd be bringing up the others. And again, this makes me very interested to see, because this boils down to a homogenization problem. So I'm actually very, very, very curious to see the 8.0 rework when we see job diversity, what we're going to see in terms of numbers. Because if you think that little baby Pictomancer with its own unique mechanic that it can take advantage of downtime by painting a canvas is a problem, now we're going to allegedly, again, I don't know the details, we're going to see every single job diversify, and we're going to have some winners and we're going to have some losers. But just food for thought. Probably no one's going to listen this later into the video, but as someone who went to the media tour, I was actually genuinely curious. The 7.0 versus 8.0 distinction, I'm very curious to see. Please give me my Scholar dots back.